Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels with me, Martin Fish, and joined as usual by Sean and Jill.
Hi.
And we're going to talk all things gardening again, aren't we?
We are.
So yeah, lots happening today.
Fantastic. And just a quick reminder that we do answer your questions. So if you've got a question, just drop us an email at info@potsandtrowels.com, info@potsandtrowels.com. Show notes have got that information, or if you're listening to this / watching it on YouTube, then you'll see it in the video description. But yeah, definitely drop us a question because we like to answer your questions. Martin likes to answer your questions. I'd be rubbish at answering your questions. I've said that before. And the other thing is, if you found us as a podcast but you don't know this, we do weekly gardening videos. Martin gives out great advice on what you can be doing in the garden to get your garden looking shipshape and Bristol fashion. Is that still a phrase? It's probably not.
Yeah,
a
I think
so.
so.
You can say that.
You've said it now.
And there's one more
Exactly.
thing just before we crack on with the actual gardening stuff, which is to make sure that you subscribe to the podcast and like and rate us, review us. Any kind words welcomed. Drop us a comment, drop us a review, rate us 78 stars or whatever it is on whatever app that you're using. We just really appreciate it. And it helps us reach more people, which is what we're after, really, isn't it?
Exactly. We want to spread the gardening love to as many people as possible, don't we? Yes. So as well as answering questions, I'm only going to do some little tips today, not big ones, because I think you're going to do a little bit of a few cookery tips on your seasonal.
Just an idea to use some leeks in the kitchen.
So we've got that coming up. But before that, we ought to get out and about, didn't we?
Yes. Martin, this week you've been to Lincolnshire Pond Plants.
I have, and had a very interesting visit. Well, I'm in rural Lincolnshire today on an old airbase, and I've come to Lincolnshire Pond Plants to have a look at how they grow the plants and what it's all about. And I'm just stepping into the nursery, which is like a giant polytunnel here. And the guy that started it all up, Dave, is tending some plants. So hello, Dave, how are you?
Hello, nice to meet you, Martin.
Good. Well, thank you for letting me come to have a look. I've just had a quick wander around. I'm going to chat to your mum later. It's amazing. I had no idea you were on this scale. It's huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems to have grown over the years and definitely taken hold over the last few years. But with the more land that we've gained, the bigger the company's had to become from where it started a very small baby in my back garden.
So how did it all start for you? What made you decide to be a grower of aquatic and pond plants?
Well, I've had koi ponds for a lot of years, and I've always been buying plants, and they've always eaten it. I've not really understood a lot of the concept about it. An elderly gentleman asked me if I would clear his lake for free, which at the time I was doing a course on a degree, and I thought, well, I can do it to help him out. I get free fishing as like a trade-off. So I thought I'll see if I can sell any of it on the internet. From that point, I had to do a lot more research. I built a load of listings. Before we'd even got there, we had loads of sales. So we had to dart about to the post office, left, right and centre. Just buy stuff that you just wouldn't expect to get it ready to post out. From that point forward, it kind of just spiraled, and then I started contacting pond suppliers and starting to feed information. As customers started asking me information, if it was stuff that I couldn't find or research, then I started to reach out to the pond suppliers. They were feeding information into me, which, lucky at the time, because I had such an interest, I was just sponging it all up and taking all that information to a point where most of the questions that are asked now, I've already been asked it before, so it's just being able to pass that information on. And a lot of it has been understanding that it's the lack of education in a lot of it, because people are scared of ponds, and then just giving that information to let them build the jump and then start to build a pond in the garden to get the frogs and the newts and the dragonflies that they're after. And then we've just built on that and tried to diversify into more types of plants to give people that choice, and even try to introduce plants that a lot of people have said they look amazing, but because we're not confident in them, the landscapers won't touch it. So because of that, we've not taken them on. So what we've done is we've taken them on, we've weathered them for a year, tried to see how they do, and then pushed them into the pond market, where people love different colours, people love different heights, and it's just enabling people to get things that have been crossbred, and they've been crossbred for years, but no one's ever run with it, because your landscaper that only knows how to use 5, 6, 7 types of plants will just stick to those.
Yeah.
Because there's no guarantee he's going to have to come back to fix it because he's planted it wrong or anything like that. So it's just giving maybe a wider depth to the market.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I find fascinating about what you do. Having seen the displays at the flower shows, you have got such a fantastic range. You know, people think of pond plants, think of water lilies and irises and, you know, the floating pond plants. But I mean, do you know roughly how many different species you've got in your collection?
So we've got 254 types of pond plants. That's marginal plants mixed with a cross bog. And then we've got in excess of 119 types of lilies. The problem is you can pull in loads of different colours, and there's many more colours that have been crossbred and they come up. But then it's seeing where the market trends are, because you want to display them all. And there's always going to be somebody that wants that one that you can't supply. Mm-hmm. But if it's one person that's buying it, you just can't house it unless we can house it for shows. And we want to pump it through the shows and think, well, this is an amazing lily. It's really hardy. It's really easy to grow. So if we show it, then people will want to be interested in it more, because they're buying something that's actually slightly harder to grow, but, you know, they're very similar. So that's the battle, shall we say?
Yeah.
Of keeping it.
Well, I mean, I'm amazed, because obviously you started off quite small. It wasn't probably what you were planning to do as a career, but you're obviously making a great job of it. And you're now on an old RAF base, aren't you? You've moved site. So just tell us a little bit, just to paint a picture, you know, what we're standing in at the moment.
So we're sat in old RAF Binbrook. We took over the old Nissan huts. First of all, when we first moved up here, and we stripped them all back. We cladded them all with wood, trying to maintain as much as possible, because as we were growing, we just didn't have that massive investment, because plants just aren't investable, shall we say,
exactly,
by banks.
yeah.
So we're trying to grow off the money that we make. So at first we've cladded them, we've maintained them, and then once we've outgrown the Nissan huts, we've started to introduce polytunnels. We've covered the ground out the back that was all just grassland, and it was all badly maintained. There's been many businesses up here over the years, and they've left many stuff for us, which we're slowly processing. It's about 15 acres that we're sat in. There are quite a few derelict buildings, and we are looking at taking them down to try and put up a giant commercial greenhouse. It's just the leaps and bounds of, is it this year we do it? Is it not? Leaps of COVID, push things back. It's a lot of uncertainty in the market, and although we're doing really well, it's just we want to take that next leap, and that's...
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great sort of repurposing of a building, because these were probably built for the Second World War, weren't they, these Nissan huts? Yeah. And who would have thought when these were built, you know, back then in the 40s or whenever, that one day they would be growing aquatic plants? And they're perfect, aren't they? Because they're round, you've taken the tin sheets off and put polythene off, so it's a really sturdy tunnel. Now, we're in the nursery tunnel, one of many where you've got plants. I've never seen so many aquatic plants. So this is basically where you do all your propagation in here, because you propagate an awful lot of the material, don't you?
So we grow a phenomenal amount of plants from seeds, maybe 50% from seed. Anything that we haven't tried, because we're trying new things every year, there's so much trial and error gone into this from the start. We're now going out to meet suppliers and have a look at what they're doing and trying adjusting what we're doing. But yeah, that we've processed from cuttings, mainly irises from cuttings, because of the changing colours you can get from seeds. Having 50, 60 types of iris on site, if your little bumblebee's buzzing around and he goes across them all, there's not enough room at the minute with the size of area that they've got, to keep them far enough apart to not cross the irises when they come through to seed. So a lot of them are done from cuttings, and then a lot of your tropical plants we do from seed, because it's just easier to bring them on. It's very late for us in our country. A lot of people want them very early spring, so they can enjoy the summer. But when you're growing them in this country, unless you're heating the tunnels, which we did do one year, you just can't bring them on fast enough. So we tend to do that more for show plants to show people what they can get, and then they can then buy them later in the season.
Absolutely, yeah. So you're not just growing plants for outdoor hardy plants, you're growing some sort of tropical ones for indoors and aquariums, that type of thing.
So we do grow a few aquarium plants, but the tropicals, we generally just take the seeds off them at the end of the year, and then we introduce the seeds late spring the following year to get them going.
Yeah.
A lot of the other plants, they're put in a 10-degree store, and they just sit there over the winter, and then they're brought out late spring when we're guaranteed no frost. Realistically, the tunnels can go down to -5 without that getting inside, but it's just the odd risk of damage, wind, and we've had many damages over the time.
Yes, I suppose, an airfield is quite open and exposed, isn't it? So you're not open to the public as such, are you? You're not a garden centre, you are a practical growing nursery. So how do you sell your plants? You've got thousands and thousands, how do you sell them all?
So we predominantly sell our plants on Amazon, eBay, and Linkspeed Plants. We sell them all year round. We trade a lot with landscapers in the winter when they're trying to set up people's ponds when people don't want to go in them because they're frozen. And we trade a lot with people in the spring over mail order. And we predominantly do everything mail order unless we're trading at shows when you can pick them up. And the aim is to get a big shop, but it's the maintenance of the shop along with the amount of staff that we have. And it's finding the right staff, because a lot of people, you need someone with the passion for plants to be able to put them in there and let them free roam and do what they want with the plants and trim them up. And it's not yes, there is a lot of moving about, but you need someone with a lot of passion to be able to just let them go and say, right, you can have the shop, we'll leave you to your own devices, you plod on, and we'll keep doing the nursery and everything and try and grow everything. It does take a few years to kind of cherry pick people that want to be here.
Absolutely. And of course, being at the flower shows across the country is a great shop window, isn't it? So, yes. And that's how I know of Lincolnshire Pond Plants. You are based here. It's your mum that tends to do the shows, isn't it? So I'm going to wander around. Your mum's somewhere on the nursery, so I'm going to find your mum and have a chat with her. But Dave, thanks for showing me in here and explaining how it all started.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Martin.
I think that's just awesome that you started that small business on eBay and then it's grown to take over an airfield. Is it the whole airfield that they have?
No, not quite. I mean, it's former RAF Binbrook, which was a World War II bomber. I think they were Lancaster bombers, and it was decommissioned in the 80s. They had other modern fighters up there then. They've got 15 acres, which is a big site, but of course, an airfield is much bigger than that. And there are other businesses on there, but it's just quite eerie to see all the old hangars and, all the old RAF buildings, the mess and things that are all in a state of semi-derelict now, but they are doing a lot of work where they are at Lincolnshire Pond Plants, and it's fascinating to see what they do.
He was talking about a bumblebee flying across and kind of cross-pollinating things. I never really thought that has been if you're kind of growing things industrially, but of course it could be, or is that just when you're trying to harvest the seeds?
It is purely if you're collecting the seed. I mean, obviously we were growing bedding plants and flowering plants, and they will always sell better in flower. That didn't matter to us, but they are growing plants, and then they want to take the seed off to collect it, dry it, sow it, and make more plants. So they're getting cross-pollination, and if they're trying to keep individual species, then that becomes more difficult. You'd have to isolate the plants so there's no cross-pollination. But yeah, interesting
stuff. Probably the wrong
stuff,
time of year
really
for that
is.
at the minute, though, is it? What sorts of things are we at? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, everything is dying down at the minute, so yes.
I was going for a segue into what we should be doing in our gardens, but that was my clunky way of changing gear from pollination into digging stuff up.
Exactly, yes. Well, I'm not with it just yet. So,
nice try.
Well, I'm going to keep my jobs this week short because if people want to see them in a little bit more detail, they're actually on our YouTube at the moment. It's the one that is live at the present. And we've just had a quick tidy up, really, in the vegetable garden. It's that time of the year. All the summer veg has been cleared, but things like the asparagus fern is now dying down. So we've decided to cut that down to ground level, just give it a quick weed, and that is it now for the winter until we do a little bit more work in the spring, which we'll obviously keep you up to date with. Some of the leaves on the kale are going yellow at the bottom, so again I like to take them off, just gets rid of them. They look better, but you get rid of all the brassica whitefly on there and any moulds that are on them. And then the leeks are looking very good this year. First time we've grown them in this garden in the new raised beds, and they are looking particularly good. We've already eaten quite a few, haven't we?
We have, yeah.
They are delicious, but they get, when it's been so wet, some of the lower leaves go a little bit manky. I don't know whether everybody knows that term, whether it's a
yellowy,
a Nottinghamshire term, but yeah, a bit mouldy. So I like to take those off because it increases the airflow, stops any fungal diseases. They look better as well, and then they're ready for when we want to pick them.
Oh, I love leeks in the kitchen. They just go with everything. Are you a leek fan?
Yeah, I do like
Sean?
a leek, actually. Yeah, I like a leek potato soup. I like to fry them in a bit of butter. Oh yeah, there's always butter in my cooking, have you noticed that?
Yeah, but leeks go so well. That's all we do with our leeks. When I cook them, I just slice them. I mean, if they're really big, then I cut them in half, sort of lengthways first. But otherwise, just slice them, melt a decent sized knob of butter in a pan. I just do it in a lidded saucepan. Put the leeks in, bit of seasoning as well, salt and pepper, and then put the lid on so that they're sweating, and then you get this gorgeous buttery juice as well that you can serve with it. And I think we mentioned a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about kale, if you want to just stir some cooked kale through that as well, then that works really well. But just a way of jazzing up a jacket potato or just mashed potato. Have you ever tried just stirring your leeks, your cooked leeks, through your mashed potato?
Ooh.
Works really nicely because you've got that
nice,
lovely buttery juice going there. If you put some cheese in there as well, then that will just melt naturally with the heat of the potato and the leeks.
My
so that's really nice.
Right now.
But it's a good time. But if you want to elevate that another notch, then if you're cooking a jacket potato, cook it as normal, cook your leeks so that they're ready, and then when your jacket potatoes are done, the skin's nice and crispy, cut them in half, scoop out all that potato that's lovely and tender and soft, put it into a bowl, just mash it with a fork, stir through some cheese and your cooked leeks, and then pile that all back into the shell of the jacket potato. Pop that, a little bit of grated cheese on the top, then pop that back in the oven just to finish off and crisp up the top of the potato. And that's mouth watering.
Me too.
So that's like a loaded potato skin.
It is,
it's
amazing. Lovely. You don't need anything else with that. That's all you need.
I have
to
a
eat.
problem with that. I have a salad dodger as a youngest son who I need to. Not only is a salad dodger, he wouldn't eat anything like leeks. He's very much a meat fiend. He likes bacon. He likes ham. So everything has to be separated for him.
Right. Yeah.
But that's fine for those. Everybody else would eat that, and I would devour that. That sounds fun.
Yeah, and then the skin's lovely and crispy as well. Then, so you can kind of scoop out the filling and then eat the skin.
Maybe you could make some homemade burgers and put chopped leeks in them, and then they'd cook in there, and he wouldn't know, or would he pick them out?
You've got to see him when he goes for a bolognese. He somehow manages to separate every tiny little scrap of mint and put that on one side of his plate, and everything else. He's very good at it. He's very fast, and he doesn't complain, and we can't really moan about the fact that he doesn't complain. Doesn't go, I won't eat that. He just works his way through it, and then at the end, I mean, I don't know. There's probably some kind of job where separating stuff to that fine is necessary.
But they are delicious. So again, when we see you next, we need to cut you some leeks.
Yeah.
Oh God, there's a list on this menu of things next time I see you, which we're going to be eating. I'm looking forward to it. You mentioned before about cutting down the asparagus. I know the current video has that on, but we have had a question about asparagus, haven't we, Jill?
We have from Andy Farmer, who says, I have some asparagus that I grew from seed last year. Is it best to leave it in the pots for another year or plant it out?
I wouldn't plant it out probably at this time of the year, to be fair. If it's growing in the pot, it will have made hopefully a good root system. I would leave it. If you've got somewhere, we don't know where Andy lives, do we?
No.
But depending where you live, I mean, it is frost hardy, but it's in a pot and it's a small plant, so it is more prone to frost damage if we get a really cold winter. So if you've got a cold greenhouse or a cold frame or somewhere sheltered in the garden, you can keep them. That will just give it that little bit of protection. And I would actually plant them out in spring, maybe April time, by then they're just starting to think about waking up. So March, April, prepare the ground, plant them out, they'll get the roots out, and you'll get some shoots popping up.
But he's saying, should he leave them in the pots for another whole year?
No, I wouldn't leave them for another whole year.
Yeah.
I think if you did them spring just gone, so 6-8 months ago, they've had a whole growing season, they will have made, I would have thought, now you could probably knock one out the pot carefully, and I would imagine it's got quite a good established root system. It's better now in the ground because the roots need to get out, but wait until spring, and then next summer it will establish a really good root system, and maybe the year after. So we're looking then at sort of spring, early summer of 25, you'll be getting some asparagus.
So you can pick.
Yeah, one or two, yeah. So yeah, no, exciting. You've got to be patient with asparagus, but it is worth it as a long-term crop in the garden, definitely.
One thing that sort of highlights for us is that we do want to hear your questions, and please do send them to us. But also just let us know where you are in the world, because things vary, don't they?
They do, yes, and we might want to pop out and see you, of course. If it's somewhere warm and exotic.
Come and share the asparagus.
Exactly, yes.
Speaking of warm and exotic, I think it's time to go back to Lincolnshire Pond Plants.
Right, well, I've stepped into what is known as the show tunnel now, and this is where all the plants are kept, the bigger plants that go to all the flower shows, and the person that builds the displays is Dave's mum, Dawn. So hello, Dawn, lovely to see you.
Hello, Martin.
This is a big tunnel, a new tunnel this is as well, isn't it? Especially just for the plants that you take to all the flower shows.
This is very exciting. I have now got purpose-built tunnels for the show.
Absolutely, yes, that's maybe. So just tell us a little bit, because although you work at the nursery here with the team, you're the sort of face of the flower shows and you build the displays. Your husband helps you as well, but you're the person that I always go to talk to. So how did you get into doing the flower shows?
So the only reason we started doing flower shows is because I bought David a stand at Harrogate Flower Show for Christmas.
Right,
That's
okay.
how we
That's a strange Christmas present, that is.
Well, my thought was, if you wanted to push the business, the only way to do it was to actually start doing some flower shows. And they weren't very keen, so I thought, right, I'm going to buy you a stand at the Harrogate Flower Show, so you'd have no choice.
And when I've been talking to David in the nursery propagation house, the shows are a shop window, aren't they? That really demonstrates what you're all about, because you are probably the only nursery on the show circuit that makes ponds now. That is your feature. You create these big ponds full of wonderful plants. So that's quite a feat to do that, isn't it? It's not like just turning up with a few plants. Thousands of gallons of water are involved.
There's a lot of logistics. So when we go to do a display at the pond at the shows, and we create generally a 6 metre by 4 metre pond, which is huge. It's not just having little pots that we can put onto a display, but the logistics of getting things there. So all our plants weigh an absolute ton because they're so full of water. So everything has to arrive on pallets. So therefore we have to have Arctic lorries come with all our pallet supplies. Then it's the logistics of getting everything forklift off, because you can't just have a lorry turn up and we can't handball them all off. So we have to arrange the forklift. But then we have to fill the pond, and everything needs time to settle. So we have to get it in the water as quickly as possible.
Right.
But then we have to arrange for water to be put in, because not everybody's happy, if we let the water go in a floral marquee.
No, I can't understand that. But you do at some shows, don't you?
We do. Mulvin lets us take the sides off, and the scouts come and help us to dismantle the pond. And they think it's amazing when we have a tsunami of water go out.
It's just irrigation, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Absolutely.
So we'll talk more about the shows, but into your I am very envious of your polytunnel. I would love something like this. So obviously these are pond plants, so they've got to be in water. So it looks like you've built mini low ponds, haven't you, essentially? Yep. But probably only, a foot deep at the most, and then filled with water. So they literally are just in water continuously until you take them out.
Absolutely. So they have to be in a large proportion of water at all times. So as long as the ground doesn't dry out, so most pond plants will cope with being on very wet ground to water over the top of the pot. So if you think about it, I mean, especially in the current climate where we tend to have a lot of flooding, and then it tends to dry up a lot, as long as the ground doesn't dry out completely, you could plant any pond plants around there.
Right, okay, so they don't have to be underwater as such.
No.
We're looking here at this first bed as you come in, because there are going to be 2, 4, 6, 8 beds by the look of it in the polytunnel. These are, am I right in thinking these are an equisetum, one of the...
They are an equisetum, yes. Horsetail.
Yes.
Effectively,
But not the
abandoned
one that we
horsetail.
grow in, not the weed one in the garden. These are really tall and structural, aren't they?
They are, and they're evergreen. They're the only thing that will stay evergreen in a pond. So, and they do add an amazing structure to your pond, but if you wind something in between it, so something like a Lychnis, a ragged robin, which has got a bit of floral to it, they enhance the colour of the flowers.
Yeah. And as I was talking to David a few minutes ago, you've got such a big range and you showcase them beautifully at the shows, especially when we get a little bit later in the season and there's a bigger range of flowering plants.
Yeah.
You know, once we've, get to the Hamptons and the Tatton shows, that you just, fill it full of really interesting plants. But it's quite good fun playing around with them, isn't it?
Well, my thought is that most people, when you think of pond plants, only think of water lilies, yellow flag irises, maybe marsh marigolds.
Yeah.
And there are so many other structures, shapes, even just the grasses where they waft in a bit of a breeze. They all add character to a pond, and it can look so amazing, and it can look tall, because a lot of ponds look very flat, because water lilies just lay flat on top of the water. So at least with height and structure, you can create the shade that you need, your 70% shade. You can add extra things in just to make it look architectural. It can encourage wildlife but still look really good.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. And it's just nice to have the water in the garden as well, isn't it? It just adds another dimension to it.
Yeah.
This year was your first RHS Chelsea Flower Show exhibit. You've done all the other shows for a couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
But to do Chelsea is something special, and you were there back in May.
We were, and we got a gold for the first time. First
Brilliant.
time at Chelsea, and gold.
Yes. You've got golds at others, but it's always special to get one at Chelsea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was saying we didn't have to go again now.
No,
But
but you are going to
unfortunately,
do.
we are.
You're going to be there in 2024. Well, I shall see you there. But no, so you've pretty much done all the shows, because you do lots of other shows as well, don't you? The Harrogate shows, the Malvern shows.
We do.
You do an awful lot.
We do, yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. So obviously lots of preparation, getting ready for next year, which will soon come round. But while we're here, I want to pick your brain, get a few bits of info off you. People have got a pond now and the plants are starting to die down. Any little tips on what they would be doing at this time of the year in their pond?
Best thing to do is to chop everything back. So something like a Talia delbata, which is quite a nice architectural plant. Put them deeper in the pond, chop them back, put them deeper in the pond. It protects them from frost. Things like your iris and things can all be chopped back. Any other plant can be chopped back. It's making sure leaves don't go in your pond, so they don't add extra nutrients, which then at the start of next year, February, March time, when we start suddenly getting a bit more sun, it doesn't go green.
Right.
You don't get algae.
So when the leaves are falling off the trees, scoop them off the surface of the pond, get rid of them basically before they sink.
Scoop them out, yeah. So you want to... and make sure that you haven't got too much overgrown oxygenators in your pond, because oxygenators are great for during the summer when the sun light's out. They'll change carbon dioxide to oxygen. At night, they take oxygen out of your water and change it to carbon dioxide. On the longer, shorter nights, they're going to take more oxygen out of your pond than they put in.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So thin them out.
Okay, and that's okay to thin them all out now. And is that
Thin
the
them
same
out.
with others? If you've got water lilies that are congested, or irises, or any marginals that are getting too big, is it a good time to do it now, or would you do that
Chop
in the
'em.
spring?
Yeah, chop them up now. The ideal time is round about now to be doing anything with your pond, because your amphibians have all left, but they'll be coming back to hibernate.
Okay.
So round about now is a good time to clear stuff out, get it all cleaned out, divide it up, give it away to your friends if you want to. It'll just mean then that your pond starts good in the spring.
Okay. And what about fish? What's your take on fish? Because I know a lot of people like to have beautiful pond plants and fish. Do the two go together?
The only thing that you have to be very careful of is when you've got fish is that you don't overfeed them, because that adds extra nutrients to your pond. The fish poo itself will add nutrients to your pond. They do create fertiliser, which is really good for your pond plants, but it's then making sure you have enough pond plants to eat all that fertilised water. Then you don't get the algae bloom.
Okay. And Koya, I believe, will eat your plants. Is that
They'll
right?
eat everything.
Okay.
So even if you put them in a floating basket and something dangles over the side, they'll pull it over so they can eat it.
Right. So don't mix the two together, basically.
No,
is
definitely
it?
not.
Right. Well, that's brilliant. I mean, it's a lovely sunny day here. We're in the tunnel. It feels quite warm, doesn't it? I've got the sun
Nice.
on my back. I'm going to leave you to play. I'm going to have another wander around before I go home. But thank you very much, and I shall see you at probably the first show of the season will be the Harrogate Spring Show
It is, yes,
in
definitely.
April. We'll see you there. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, Martin.
I now know what to ask for Christmas: a stand at the Harrogate Flower Show. What do you reckon? I'm not sure what I'm
Exactly,
going to
yes.
show on that stand. A couple of mouldy tomatoes that I still need to put in the compost bin. I've got a very impressive camellia in my garden, but that's probably about it, if I'm honest.
But what a good way to get your son into exhibiting at shows. Having said that, David doesn't do the shows. He's very much the grower back at the nursery, and Mum Dawn is there, and it's Dawn that we see at most of the shows, don't we?
Yeah.
That's a good point, actually. We've got a video, haven't we, of Dawn, well, you talking to Dawn at, was it Malvern? No,
I think it was
where
Malvern
It was
Spring
Malvern.
Show, yes.
Malvern Spring
yes.
Show. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes. So if anybody wants to have a look at that video, they can just go to the show notes, or if you're watching on YouTube, the description, or I'll put a little link in the corner of the video and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, fantastic. Have we got another question? I think we have, haven't we? Got another question through, which I'm going to read out
What
for
about
you.
gooseberries?
But, I've got one about gooseberries.
Gooseberries.
Oh, controversial,
Gooseberries.
Sean. Gooseberries.
Hardly. What's gooseberry? Okay, for listeners, I hail from Lancashire, and we say gooseberry.
I
And
think
we're Nottinghamshire.
I think there is that east-west divide. I think the Pennine divides it. Certainly Nottinghamshire, where we originally come from, it was always you've got me saying it now. Gooseberry.
We need to go to Buxton and ask what
In the
they,
middle,
what
yeah.
they say in the middle.
Yes. And what do you shorten it to? What if you we used to call them goosgogs.
Goosegogs.
Yeah.
Goosegogs.
Goosegogs,
Yeah.
yeah.
Or goosegogs, yeah.
Yeah.
Goosegogs, I think, yeah. Yeah, no, goosegogs. Anyway, sorry, this is a proper rabbit hole. Let's go for the question. This is from somebody who's asked on YouTube. We have a video about how to propagate fruit bushes from hardwood cuttings, and he's asked, apologies if the wrong place. There's no wrong place. If you ask us a question, we'll try and answer it here on the podcast, though. I've acquired a large gooseberry bush, or
Gooseberry.
a bush with those kind of fruits on. I was wondering if it could be split at the roots to create more trees, or is this one that can't? Well, I suppose we'd have to see it, really, would we? Or are they all the same? Is a gooseberry a gooseberry?
Well, yeah, I mean, normally they're grown from a hardwood cutting, one sort of woody stem that's pushed in at roots, and then the buds along the stem branch out. But they do occasionally sucker. So you'll almost get like an underground shoot that grows up at the side of the parent plant, and that will root underground. So it depends really on what it's looking like. If it's a thicket growing from the ground, then sometimes you can actually get a piece off attached with a root, but you're potentially also going to disturb your parent plant doing that. So what I think is by far the easiest is if you can get piece of this year's growth that will have now turned woody, about the thickness of a pencil or just a little bit thicker, trim it to about 20 centimetres, 8 inches, something like that, below a bud, above a bud, put it in a pot of compost, or even just push it into the garden halfway. They root so easily. So you've got two choices, but if it looks like there's a thicket and you think, yeah, a bit of that will come away without causing too much damage to the parent plant, then now is the time to do it. If you're in the northern hemisphere. Winter time basically is the time to lift and divide if you want to.
That's a good point. We don't know if he's in Lancashire, Nottinghamshire, or Australia.
Exactly.
Elsewhere.
And actually, to be fair, I don't know if it's a he. I'm just going by a picture on YouTube. So apologies if I've got that completely wrong, which is entirely possible. Just a reminder, send your questions to info@potsandtrowels.com. And there was one more thing that pops up on YouTube. We've got a video of moving an established shrub, and somebody has basically made a comment about your footwear, Martin. You should really invest in a pair of boots or Wellingtons. This is very painful to watch, or this is painful to watch. I'm not sure what they're referring to there. I think you were digging up a shrub and moving it into the border, weren't you?
I always wear boots in the garden. I don't wear my Wellingtons in the garden. I have actually got a lovely pair of Wellingtons. I don't wear them when I'm digging for the simple reason I've damaged so many pairs of Wellingtons with a spade because the sole is softer on a Wellington, and it actually, between the heel and the sole, it can cut in and damage them. So I don't use them if I'm digging in the garden, but I always wear I've got a pair of leather boots that I always wear in the garden. I'm going to have to look back at the video now.
You weren't wearing your outdoor clogs, like your sort of...
Oh, I can't imagine.
No, you were wearing boots. I've looked at this. Sorry, I should have put in that information first. I've looked at you were wearing your leather boots.
Yeah.
I think it was quite claggy and muddy, and they just thought you're just getting covered in mud on your boots.
Yeah, but I wash them off.
He takes them off before he comes in.
In fact,
he's not going to change his ways after 40 odd years of gardening.
That pair that you saw in the video have actually just been binned because I've actually worn them out. I've worn the heel off, so I'm actually breaking in a new pair at the moment. But they do generally last me a couple of years. Which is interesting because Stephen Routledge, that we visited lifting the dahlias a few weeks ago, he says he gets through 2 pairs of boots a year.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know what he does to them, but I can get usually a couple of years out of a pair of boots.
Welly wanging.
Exactly.
Probably does some welly wanging. And if you don't know what that is, because, maybe Google it. It's not rude.
It's not rude, not at all. Did we have another question from Andrea? Sent us in a quick question. I think I saw one from Andrea, who's a regular with us. Andrea also used to listen before she moved to Lancashire. She used to listen to me on Radio York. I think it was about water butts. I will check it, but I'm sure it was along the lines of: do you need to drain your water butts in the winter?
Good question
to stop them freezing.
Now, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and it has turned a little bit cooler this weekend. We are getting a bit of frost and sort of low temperatures, which is good. The wind is coming at the moment where we're sitting. It's coming from the north, which is always a bit cooler. I've never ever drained a water butt, Andrea. If it's a plastic water butt, then I've had them freeze solid over the years, but it just expands and pushes up. I've had them lift the lid off in a big block of ice and then it thaws and goes down. And you mentioned, do you need to insulate the tap? I've, again, never insulated the tap. Obviously, when it freezes solid, you can't get water out. But even if you've insulated the top, it won't stop the mass of water freezing. But I've never had one damaged by the frost because it just expands upwards, the ice, rather than pushing outwards.
But what you should do, and we need to do this now, is if you've got a hose pipe outside, you should take the sprayer head off it, because that will get damaged if it freezes. Then that will. We've lost many a spray gun. So you can leave the hose pipe outside, but take that spray gun off and put it inside.
But we might, because we don't use the hose pipe in the winter anyway, so that gets all hard and brittle, doesn't it? So we could put that in. But but
some people have the ones that are attached to the wall.
That's very true. Yes, good point, Mrs. Fish.
Oh, that's a good point. I've got a spray head, so maybe I'll pop it in the shed. And I was just thinking about terracotta pots, because freeze thaw can be a thing, can't it? Is that a problem for terracotta pots, or are they going to be generally all right?
It depends on the quality of the terracotta pot, really, Sean. If they're a good quality one and it's frost-proof, you should be fine. You often see quite good ones in sometimes supermarkets or garden centres, which are great for the summer, but they're not frost-proof. So you do need to check that. We've got some that we've had years that are really frost-proof and they stand out through the winter. I think they're the Yorkshire pots, which are really strong. What is important is to lift them off the ground a little bit, though, isn't it? Which is
something like a pot mate.
Yeah, so pot feet or pot mate are great. So they just lift it up off the ground.
Yeah, that helps the drainage, gives a bit of airflow underneath it. And you're not getting marks on your patio that way.
we've got an olive in a very large, I'm going to say square, but it's not, it's a cube, that kind of rectangular pot, which we got as a wedding present 15 years ago. And I noticed a crack on it, so I don't know what's going on there. I suspect it got hit by a football. But anyway, these are things that are not for gardening questions. That's more kind of a sport podcast.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
What's happening next week on the podcast and on the videos? What are we doing next week?
Next week on the podcast, I'm going to be talking to Lawrence Wright. And Lawrence is the head gardener at Newby Hall, an amazing garden in North Yorkshire. It's closed now for the winter, but I'm going to go up and have a chat with Lawrence and find out a little bit about the work they're doing. And on the next video, Mrs. Fish,
it's roses.
Oh, it's roses. Yes, yeah. We've got some bare root roses that we need to get in the garden. So yeah.
Yes.
Looking at
so
that.
It's all happening.
Watch the videos on YouTube or Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Twitter or X, and subscribe to the podcast and never miss a thing. For more information, go to potsandtrowels.com.